Okay, let's go ahead and... Oh, okay. Real funny. Focus, focus. All right, now we can get this moving. Headphone highlights. Hello, I'm Master Marslander, and today we're talking about the ZMF Bokeh. Bokeh, what the heck does bokeh mean? Well, if you're at all involved in photography and video, you probably know, but bokeh is this blurry effect behind me here, where everything in the background looks blurry. That's the bokeh effect. Bokeh. Focus. You get the joke now? Okay, let's move on. The ZMF Bokeh here I purchased myself. I was fortunate enough to be able to get into the pre-order for the very first batch, which is why I have the nice kind of ruby red color scheme on mine. And also I was able to purchase along with it the optional tuning kit. So I got a couple different pairs of pads, some tuning meshes, all sorts of cool stuff. And we're going to kind of talk about that and how all these things work together and what kind of changes when you do some generic pad swapping and pad rolling. But before we get into any of that, let's talk about the build. And here they are, the Bokehs. I don't think I have to be the one to tell you, but man, are they gorgeous. Absolutely stunning. These cups are, in fact, solid limbo wood, and mine are stained in kind of this ruby red. Your color, the color of the wood that you get if you were to buy these today, might be different than mine, but nonetheless, freaking beautiful, beautiful grain and wood family here. The chassis design is actually new to this headphone. The methodology of the Bokeh here was that Zach from ZMF wanted to release a headphone that was more accessible and more affordable so that more people can get into the ZMF family. And that's what he kind of strived for with the Bokeh. He streamlined the design process. He streamlined with a third-party vendor to get the chassis built so that he doesn't have to do that in-house himself. But of course, he was involved in every step of the way. And the result is, yes, a more affordable ZMF, but it is still very, very much a ZMF and still a very unique. Every single one of these is going to be unique. Your wood grain, your color, everything will be completely unique to whatever you purchase. It's an incredibly unique headphone. It's very, very special, and that really can't be understated. So let's take a look at this new build, this new chassis that we have here for the Bokeh. It looks very similar to what you get on kind of classic ZMFs, but it's still just an absolutely beautifully machined and designed headphone. The yoke here is solid metal. Your pin here is, of course, a polished metal. Your adjustment bracket here is also metal. Then you have this wonderful spring steel headband, which is extremely soft to the touch, this kind of faux leather feel. Especially on the underside, also very, very soft, very plush and silky feeling. And then you have your typical leather ZMF comfort strap. It even has your ZMF punched right in there. But yeah, nice, genuine leather comfort strap in there, like you get on many ZMFs. And just look at it. Look at the way it's built. You have full 180 degrees of swivel. So I can swivel it flat like so, or if I want to, I can even go 180 degrees the other way around. In terms of your tilt, you have plenty of it, as you can see, more than enough than you'll ever need to get that really good, proper, comfortable fit. Another really great addition and decision that Zach made with the Bokeh here to once again make it more accessible is that it's just a simple 3.5mm jack to terminate to a cable. That's awesome because there's plenty of cables of that termination to choose from. You can go out and buy your own, whatever you want. It's so simple. It's so easy. Excellent choice on that. You can never go wrong with a 3.5mm jack. The driver for the Bokehs is a 50mm LPC driver. That is a liquid crystal polymer driver. And then the really big change we get out of the headphone here, the thing that really makes it stand out the most from other ZMFs, besides the fact that it is the more affordable option, is that this is significantly easier to drive than any other ZMF. The Bokeh here is 80 ohms of impedance with 103 dB sensitivity. So it's very, very easy to drive. You can drive these on just about any device on the market today, desktop or portable. And that was another kind of methodology he was going for. He wanted to make a ZMF that you could easily take with you, portable. And another interesting feature of this headphone is that it is using the Atrium damping system. So the same system we get in the actual Atrium, which is a phenomenal headphone, you are getting that same damping in the Bokeh. So yeah, the build is genuinely amazing. It's phenomenal. It's a very solid build. It feels really, really well built, really, really sturdy and robust, but at the same time, elegant. Ooh, elegance and armor. I don't know. It's amazing. It's an incredibly well built headphone. The only downside you really get, the only complaint and criticism I have about the build of the Bokeh actually comes when you incorporate the cable. Now, the cable itself that it came with, do note that the cable that you might be getting if you were to order the Bokeh today might be different than what I have. But the cable that I got here itself is a phenomenal cable. It looks beautiful. It's a wonderful, wonderful woven fabric cable, and again goes to a very simple 3.5mm termination, which he marked easily with just a little red O-ring right there. And then the split down here, also very nice, just has some very subtle ZMF branding right there. And that's really it. It's a solid honkin' piece of a splitter that divides the cable up nicely and cleanly. The length of the cable is perfect for my needs. I have no complaints with the length. It's exactly the length that I want to be able to sit here in my chair and plug the Bokeh into all my different amps and DACs and whatever. So it's a perfect length for me. I also had to be very fond of the color scheme. Black and copper is kind of my weakness. Okay, great. So the cable's very nice. Then what's the problem? The problem is you get very, very noticeable cable harmonics with the Bokeh. If I have a cable plugged into this, doesn't matter what cable I use. It's not even necessarily the cable that it came with. Any cable I plug into here, if I brush that cable against my shirt, I hear it inside here in a pretty significant way. It's very noisy, very noticeable cable harmonics. So that's not great. I don't care much for that, but in the greater scheme of things, that's really the only complaint and only criticism I have with what is otherwise a fantastically built headphone. All right, let's get into comfort. Now this is a large headphone. It's big, it's a big boy, and this is real solid wood, so there's some weight to this. These are just under 500 grams, and that is a fairly heavy headphone, but the way that it distributes that weight and the way that it fits on my head, it feels so much lighter than it actually is. The weight distribution is just about damn perfect. I don't have any discomfort on anywhere on the top of my head. I don't have any discomfort in terms of the clamp force. The clamp force is very, very easy. It's enough for it to be snug on my head, but not nearly so much that it is fatiguing in any way. I could sit here and wear these for hours, and I have. The comfort strap does an excellent job, again, distributing that weight on the top of my head, so I don't have any hot spots anywhere on top of my head. And that's a pretty big deal when you have what it can be a fairly heavy headphone. I don't feel the weight at all. The only time I'm ever going to really feel the weight is if I'm jarring my head back and forth really, really fast. And even then, it's so snug and it's so plushy that I barely feel it. It's an excellent design when it comes to weight ratio. It's so good. And then we can talk about the pads. ZMF, besides making incredible headphones, is also known for making incredible pads. And these are the protein leather pads. They're just a simple, solid protein leather perforated right here on the face of the pad. They are angled. See if I can show that off here. So as you can see, yes, they are angled. So the front of the pad is thinner than the back of the pad. So you are getting a nice, even seal around your ear. A natural kind of seal. And they're very, very soft and very, very plush. I mean, ZMF makes some of the best pads on the market, in my opinion. So it's just a no-brainer that the Bokeh is going to have an incredible pad. And it does. These are amazing pads. But they're not the only pads that this set came with. I also have here the hybrid pads, as well as the suede pads. They're all basically the same shape, and they all basically have the same comfort level. They're extremely comfortable pads, no matter which one you go with. I will say that the protein leather does have the slightest tendency to get just a little bit warmer than the others over long listening sessions. Otherwise, fantastic. I will say that I do wish that the comfort strap here was softer. It's real leather, which is very nice, but it's kind of firm. I mean, it's somewhat malleable, but it is a little firm. When I think of something more like a Mod House audio comfort strap, which is just that amazing, incredibly soft strap, I prefer that personally, but you know, it's nitpicky. It is what it is. It's still a great strap and it still functions exactly what it's supposed to be doing. So great, super comfortable headphone. Where do they sit? Ooh, that squeak. Where do they sit in our comfort cloud system? I'm giving these a 8.5 clouds of comfort. We were almost on cloud 9 for the Bokehs. It just missed it by a hair. If this comfort strap was the same kind of plushness that I got out of a Mod House audio comfort strap, and if they were maybe just a teeny tiny bit lighter, then we would be probably on cloud 9 for sure. But yeah, 8.5 clouds of comfort, an exceptionally comfortable headphone. So speaking of pads, let's talk about the tuning kit a little bit and these extra pads. What comes stock on the Bokeh, at least on the Bokeh that I ordered, are these protein leather pads. But with the tuning kit, again, I get these very, very soft, ridiculously soft and ridiculously premium feeling suede pads. And I also get these hybrid pads. I believe that Bokehs moving forward will be coming stock with the hybrid pads, but you can always order any of these when you order your Bokeh. So since they're part of the tuning kit, then you can probably guess that yes, swapping the pads does kind of affect the sound a little bit. So before we dive too deep into the sound performance of the Bokeh, I want to talk about a little bit how things change with the pads. It's mostly pretty subtle. There's not a huge change, but there is some. The protein leather pads offer you what I would say is the most relaxed listening experience. It has the most bass and it has the widest kind of soundstage. So really the most immersive, fun, and relaxed sound coming from the protein leather. The suede pads are more intimate. So things aren't so wide. Staging isn't so wide. Imaging isn't so separated. It's a much more intimate experience. It's more focused. It has more intensity. And I would say that the treble is a bit brighter out of the suedes as well. You are sacrificing some bass range. The bass is not quite as impactful and heavy with the suedes as it is with the protein leather. The hybrids are kind of the middle ground between the two. With the hybrids, you do get more intimacy than you do with the protein leather, but I would say not quite as much intimacy as you do with the suede. There is more treble, and it is a sparkier treble than what you get with the protein leather, and the vocals are a lot more forward and kind of in your face and intimate with the hybrid pads here, again, against the protein leather. So that's kind of what you're looking at. The way I see it is it looks kind of like this. Your hybrid pads are kind of the stock, middle-of-the-road sound signature for the Bokehs. The suede makes things way more intense, way more focused, and a lot more kind of snappy and poppy. Really good for higher treble stuff. And then the opposite end of the spectrum from those suedes would be the protein leather, which makes things really, really warm, relaxed, punchy low end, and much wider, more immersive kind of sound signature. Which pad do I prefer? I haven't really decided. I've been going back and forth, but I think for me personally, for most things that I listen to, I'll probably stick with the protein leather because I do kind of like the extra width in the soundstage and the better separation in the imaging you get with the protein. But I also like the suede for just how opposite they are, how much of a contrast they are from the protein, with giving me that extra bit of intensity and focus and intimacy. And then the hybrids, again, a middle ground. So I tend to lean towards kind of one extreme or the other. Middle of the road is usually a little bit kind of boring for me, so I like things either to be very immersive or be very focused. The hybrid pads are great, but if I had to choose, I'd probably choose between the suede or the protein leather, depending on your flavor of music you want to get out of it. I will also mention that the tuning kit that came with this headphone also included some interchangeable tuning meshes that you can put behind the earpad kind of onto the driver. So they're an additional way to help tune the headphone to pretty much however you want. I chose to just keep the stock mesh. I thought it served the job very, very well on its own. So this review was primarily using just the stock meshes. So that's how the interchangeable pads can change the sound, but what is the sound of the Bokehs? What's their sound performance? Let's talk about that now. The Bokeh are a closed-back headphone, and yet they are extremely spacious and extremely airy. tremendous amounts of soundstage out of this, a very immersive amount of soundstage and really immersive imaging to make these sound huge. It's very reminiscent of the Mod House Argon, which is a really big compliment. The sound signature in general is a very, very smooth, relaxed, and enjoyable sound. The kind of sound that pretty much anyone's going to be able to enjoy. The bass performance is fantastic. You have really deep thumping, very high quality sub bass, and then bass range in your mid bass is very punchy, very fun, but also very transparent and super clean. You get a lot of detail in what is still a very bombastic kind of bass range. Mid range, I would say, is probably the biggest focus in the sound here, no pun intended. And it's just extremely natural sounding. It's a very real sounding mid range with a lot of detail, a very impressive amount of detail. The vocal range is excellent. Vocals sound super realistic, very, very natural. They also sound very spacious though. They're not very like in your face. It's not a very intimate vocal headphone in general. Vocals have a little bit of a distance to you to kind of add to this immersive feel. So while the vocals are still front and center and right at you, they give you some space. They give you some air, some separation. And you can really feel the vocals kind of wrap around you. Imaging is excellent. Superb imaging. Very wide separation in the imaging, and it's very well defined. Very, very precise, and 360 degrees of it. Gaming in these is fantastic. My goodness. I hear everything. I hear every footstep, every gunshot, and I know exactly where it's coming from anywhere around me, as well as just where the entire ensemble of the full orchestra I'm listening to is sitting there, out there in front of me or around me. So this results in an extremely immersive listening experience, particularly for movies and for games. The high end has great detail and also great sparkle and texture, though it is a little bit relaxed. You're never going to be fatigued by the treble in the bokeh here. That being said, you are still getting a lot of good clarity and detail out of it. You could say that maybe the treble is just slightly rolled off a little bit at the tip-top end, but I would say if that is the case, it is very, very minimal, because once again, the amount of detail I get in the high end and the texture I get in the high end, I never felt like I wasn't getting enough. I never felt like I wasn't hitting the highs I know I needed to be hitting to get the detail that I need. So just super realistic, super fun, super engaging, energetic, a very cinematic, very theatrical sounding headphone all around. And okay, so before I actually turn the camera on, I actually made a note of this. It's funny. Before I turned the camera on to make this review, I was listening to some Daft Punk, and man, I gotta tell you, sitting here at the studio, I don't think that Get Lucky has ever sounded as good as it did with these just a few minutes ago. Wowee. So the Bokeh here, I think, are genuinely the perfect entry to get you into the ZMF family line. You can't get any better. I mean, really, you're joining the family with what is very much in every aspect a ZMF headphone. They're built incredibly well. They're absolutely stunning to look at. The wood and everything on this is perfection. The machining on the chassis is fantastic. They're gorgeous and they're fantastically well made, with the only real criticism being that cable harmonics, but who knows, maybe he'll fix that in the next batch. But otherwise, I would say that this could be not just an incredible headphone, but it could be a freaking art piece. They're so freaking beautiful. Every ZMF is gorgeous, and the Bokeh is no exception. It's an extremely comfortable headphone and can be driven on just about anything. He kind of wanted this, again, to be a little bit of a portable solution, so you could take this on the go to like shows, so you can try out a whole bunch of gear without having to bring some crazy high impedance headphone. And he's accomplished that. It does that. It's still a giant headphone, so maybe not the most portable thing, but it's so easy to drive. My goodness. Now, while this might be the most affordable ZMF, let's not kid ourselves. There's no such thing as a cheap ZMF. This is still a commitment. I understand that, but man, if you can fork it, I think it's worth it. Oh my gosh. And for a closeback, these might be one of the best closeback listening experience I have had here at the test bench. And because of that, after going through this whole testing procedure and, going through this entire review process, I think I'm ready to say that the ZMF Bokeh here is now my favorite closed-back dynamic headphone that I own. Nothing else looks anywhere near as good, and I don't think anything else can really compete in terms of sound performance. An incredible headphone in every aspect. And I really can't wait to see how things go for the Bokeh. I know that Zach's going to just keep improving on this thing. But man, right out of the gate here on batch 1, stunning. Truly stunning. An incredible headphone. That's about it. If you're interested in purchasing one for yourself, links in the description. They're amazing. And that's kind of the end of it right there. They're amazing. In any case, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will be seeing you again very soon.